Say what you want to say.
All right, take two.
They'll never hear take one. They'll never know.
Yeah, probably for the best. So basically our topic is intrusive thoughts versus our subconscious. And what I was learning when I was researching is that our subconscious is basically where our intrusive thoughts are stored. And one illustration I saw is basically an iceberg. And you know how like most of the iceberg is usually under the water, and that part under the water is your subconscious, basically. So what your subconscious is what you don't know you know a lot of times. But your conscious is what you're thinking about and what you think or what you have to do to think about it and that sort of thing. So like, I also heard in dreams, whenever you see faces of people, that's often like faces you've seen throughout your day or throughout your life. So it's like you think it's a new face, but it's actually
just pop it. You're good.
Okay. Yeah.
The stealthiest opening of a can. Please don't interrupt.
Sorry,
Please
Jake.
don't interrupt.
Sorry, Jake.
It's all good. Stealthy in air quotes again.
It's like when we play D&D, it's like, oh, I'm going to be stealthy. You're in full chainmail armor.
So true.
Watch my roll, though.
Yeah. I mean, I was basically done with the intro part, but yeah.
Yeah. So you were talking about how in dreams, people's faces that you see in dreams are often people that you've seen throughout the day or people that you know, but really haven't thought about, stuff like that. Like,
Yeah. And if our previous podcast gets posted, I think that's when we were talking about dreams, and I think that's kind of what made me think about this is that's where dreams come from a lot of times, is like our subconscious mind and what you don't know, you know, that sort of thing. But just for help for anyone that doesn't know, intrusive thoughts are often triggered by stress or anxiety. They may also be a short-term problem brought on by biological factors such as hormone shifts. So this was the interesting part. For example, a woman might experience an uptick in intrusive thoughts after birth of a child. And so that's intrusive thoughts.
is that her fault or her husband's fault?
Both.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. So that's intrusive thoughts, but the subconscious mind is also known as the non-conscious mind. It's a complex part of the mental process that influences our thoughts, emotions, and behavior. It stores and retrieves information and ensures that we respond in a way that's consistent with our self-concept. The subconscious mind is divided into 3 levels: conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. So yeah, a little help for the listeners or any of you that might be wondering.
It's help for me too. I didn't do as much research as I should have.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't either, but we tried. We trying out here.
I did research, but my research was brown bottles.
Oh, yeah. A lot of research.
Yep, a lot of research.
Yeah, so the 3 parts: conscious defines thoughts and actions that are within our awareness. Subconscious defines automatic actions that we can become aware of if we think about them. And then unconscious defines past events and memories. So yeah.
I can relate to having a lot of intrusive thoughts during stressful situations.
Yeah, that actually makes sense, because that's what this was also saying is, they can be triggered by a variety of factors, including stress, anxiety, trauma, or underlying mental health conditions.
Yeah.
So
that was something that I found in the research I was doing too, of like, I feel like the concept of intrusive thoughts has been very much, I guess, like, not dumbed down, but played off, I guess, a little bit. Because, like, everybody seems to talk about it, at least in the circles that I run in, everybody talks about it as, like, oh, yeah, don't push that button. But by actual definition, intrusive thoughts are usually associated with, like, harm and other such things that are not acceptable to the cultural norms that you have around you. And it's not just don't push the big flashy red button, which that's just human nature. Like, that's just something that we want to do. It's big, it's there in our face, we want to hit the button. But it's even more so of, like, very, very commonly associated with a lot of mental health things. So either, you know, OCD or PTSD, even simple stuff. I say simple stuff, even stuff that is more common, like depression or anxiety. It changes our brain to think different things that break the social norm and may not be in a positive light for anyone, whether it be physical or mental or even sexual. Like, there are a lot of intrusive thoughts that are just a mess, and people can get obsessed with those thoughts. And so it was a lot darker than I expected, because, like, you see all sorts of, like, TikToks and stuff like that of, like, oh, I let my intrusive thoughts win, and it's like them throwing, you know,
a water balloon at somebody,
right, or throwing a pizza in the blender to see what would happen. It's like, that's really, it's weird, but it's not
really an intrusive
it's not really
thought.
what
It's more of
by
like
definition it is.
a prank or experiment.
Right, exactly. So I'm wondering if we're changing the definition enough that that's what it means now, or if it's still just, you know, that's a term that we just kind of use willy-nilly and don't really know what it means very often. That's what it felt like to me. I was like, oh, I've been using that wrong a lot.
I've just dealt with those thoughts for so long that it's like, okay, it's fine to joke about it once in a while. Just like, oh, I'm going to throw a pizza in a blender. But, like, a lot of times the intrusive thoughts that I deal with are like, I'm going to strangle this guy. Like, pull my shoelace out of my shoe and full on just like, I'm like, when that happens, like, it doesn't happen often, but it's like, it just goes through one ear and out the other. I'm like, did that just really go through my mind? Like, did that really just happen?
I feel like that's way more textbook definition, because, like, there were a lot of things that pointed to it may not ever match what the person actually wants, but it's something that shows up and you can't get rid of it. It just shows up and it stays there for a little while and then moves on when it moves on, not by your choosing.
Yeah, a lot of times when I have when I'm finding, I'm like, whoa, there went another one. Oh my gosh, there went another one. Oh, there's another one. It's like, I'm not handling the situation. I'm just like, I'll worry about that later. I'll worry about that later. And there'll be like a lot of tiny little things. And then I'm like, I hear that voice in the back of my head. It's like working up that panicky feeling, that panic there. Oh, you didn't handle this at this customer. Oh, you didn't do this. Oh, they're gonna drop your service. They're gonna leave you for this reason. And it's like, well, you know, it wouldn't get to that point if you just handle the tiny thing and then handle the next tiny thing and then handle the next tiny thing. And one of our managers, he struggles with that. He'll get like 1,000 tiny things in a day, and instead of handling the tiny things, he'll worry about the one big thing. And I'm like, you know, the 80,000 tiny things that you have are way more important right this second, that you can get done 10 of them in 3 minutes than handling this one big thing that you may or may not have the power to change.
Yeah.
And so he'll get overwhelmed. And then I'll walk in, me being the overwhelming kind of person I can be. And like his boss, our mutual boss that we have to deal with on a daily basis, brought that to my attention. He's like, tell him. He's like, you've gotten really good at handling little things really fast. Like, you're one of my fastest guys to handle. Anytime your phone goes off, you've almost already handled it by the time that I see it. And Ty's not good at doing that. So poke him a little bit. Make fun of him just a tiny bit. Like, hey, you know, Ty, if you handled those 5 tiny little things, they wouldn't become a big molehill, or you wouldn't get stressed out at the end of the day when you're like, I've got 1,000 things to handle right now. So that's what we've been working on.
It's been awfully quiet, Travis. Kind of smirking over there. What's going on?
Just been kind of trying to figure out which part of my experience with the intrusive thoughts I want to share. Yeah, I think a lot of it's kind of similar to Isaac, is like a little more intense, and thankfully, you know, those intrusive thoughts stay intrusive thoughts, and you know, thankfully I don't adopt them as my own, because that's when it gets really scary. But like it's just super random stuff. Like I feel like it's part of just living a sane, you know, for the most part, normal life without being violent or destructive. And just like kind of a silly example is like when I walk next to the knife block in the kitchen, it's like, that's a sharp object. I could do a lot of damage, but I'm not going to touch it. I mean, like, I'm going to use it to chop vegetables, but, you know, then my intrusive thoughts are like, I wonder what would happen if you just like stab someone with it. I was like, that's a good question, but we're not going to find out. It's just like this random stuff that pops in my mind like that. And, you know, it's a little disturbing, but, you know, I'm not too bothered by it because I know that, you know, it happens a lot, and not like a lot, but
yeah,
like,
it's still intrusive. It's still
it's
an unexpected thing, but
right.
It's not something that's so uncommon that it shifts how you would normally handle it.
Right.
So
I feel like that's part of the reason why our certain areas of society function way better than others, because it's like, oh, the person that I'm staring at, talking to, could literally end my life. Has the ability to rock my world physically and mentally. But I know that I could do the same to theirs, and so we just mutually, it's like a mutual assured destruction, or we could just work together.
So, you know, a nuclear arms race, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, basically, but on a smaller extent.
Yeah.
But like other
So you're saying that makes the world work better? Hold on.
Wait a second.
We just jumped topics, man. I didn't
No,
know we were
but-
doing Cold War today, too.
more so like my dad has the ability to make my life super easy and super miserable. And so I love and respect him. And I'm pushed more towards treating him like a normal human being because he treats me that way. And I know that he could either be the best thing that's ever happened to me or the worst thing that's ever happened to me as like a kid. And I was like, okay, so I can either learn from him or perceive him as a threat 24/7. It's like he has the ability to protect me physically and rock my world if I do something, if I step out of line. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean,
like my existence with like under him is so like small. Like, hey, my worldview, I understand so little at the age that I'm thinking about that I'm like, okay, I'm scared to step out of line. But I also know that if I don't step out of line, my existence is wonderful. He loves me and he'll nurture me. And if I continually step out of line, he'll lay the law down. And then at some point he will get physical. Does that make sense?
still, yeah. I mean,
Is it kind of like just like
I had like in my professional world, I have more respect for the people who are physically capable. I have a lot less respect for the people who are out of shape, like severely out of shape. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can trust you taking care of this versus no, you're no, I'm talking about like we had this higher up guy who was kind of a pain in the butt, and he just was not physically fit at all. And it's like, if you can't handle taking care of your own body in some way, shape, or form, like you eat like garbage and it shows. So how do we have any trust to make sure that you can take care of hundreds of people's financial situation? Like,
see, that's an interesting conversation because
that's where mine goes with.
Yeah,
my mind goes with
you
it.
value physical health a lot higher than most things in life.
Yes,
Like, it's probably a top 5.
for sure.
Okay. So that being said, I'm sure there's a ton of research out there about like, if you're responsible in one thing, how responsible does that make you in another, or vice versa. But what people are gifted at and skilled at is definitely not based on one attribute.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I'm just my point is more so like like if you're at least you don't have to be super shredded. You just don't let yourself be 350 pounds and then tell me how to do this aspect. Or any just you can be the most brilliant person, but if you've got to take care of yourself, you got to take care of. You can't. My thing is, okay, I'm given a lot of trust in my job. If I say something happened, it happened as far as my management is concerned, because they know that they can trust me, because I show them that they can trust me in every single aspect, not just one area. Not just like, oh, I've got a gift in this one area and that's the only thing I'm good at. I'm being trustworthy in every sort of my area.
Sure. Yeah, I track with you. I understand. But again, you're coming at it with this physical is one of the highest. And if that's the case, let's throw a wrench in the scenario. You bump into somebody who's more jacked than you are and just got out of a mental hospital, but you don't know that. Would you be willing to listen to their thoughts on depression? Like,
I would be willing to listen and deeply consider it.
Okay. Which is fine. But I think the same can be true of the opposite of, yeah, somebody's not physically fit like you are, but they are able to fully do another job very well. Like,
true.
Yeah.
But and another thing, I don't mean to this is just me picking one single portion out of it. But if you let's say, more so I judge based upon the fruits that you produce.
Okay. So
if you're producing good fruits in this area, but you're not physically fit, but you're also a polite person, then I'm more likely to listen. I'm not just going to shut somebody off because they're overweight or they're out of shape or whatever. But it's like my dad, I'll still listen to a lot of the advice that he has. But if he's telling me that if he's talking to me about my eating habits, I'm going to be like, all right, brother.
That's different because now you're not gauging it strictly off of something that you prioritize. You're gauging it off of how they are resembling that same attitude in their own life.
Yes.
And if we're roping this back into intrusive thoughts, I mean, now we're starting to talk about like social pressure and how does that work? Because if somebody looks at you and says, oh, maybe you should drive 50 miles per hour over the speed limit. And, the intrusive thought can show up from time to time and say, yeah, okay, it's a 40 mile per hour road. I can do 90 and not kill anybody. It'll be fine. That's an intrusive thought, right? Like that's clearly not going to help you. That's not something that's good for you. But if you get into a social situation where you can say, no, I don't want to do that. And then your friend right next to you says, hey, why don't you do that? Then you're starting to talk about more of what you were just describing of like, okay, do we actually trust this person to make logical decisions? Do we include them in what our conscience would say is a good choice? Or would we throw them into no, you're more of like an intrusive thought person. Like, we don't listen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely think there are people like that for sure. And I also think that there are people that are more what you were talking about of like, they give advice in realms that they are clearly not skilled.
Yes.
I mean, not too long ago, I took my dog to the dog park, and most of you guys, you've not met my dog, right?
I've not officially met your dog.
All right.
I've seen
but
it.
you guys have met my dog.
Yes.
And you know that she's got a little bit of a crazy streak in her. But she can also work through that. It just takes a little bit of time. So when we got to the dog park,
Travis just raised his hand very slowly and awkwardly.
How does one meet a dog?
I mean, you have never physically been in her presence, correct?
I mean, like
How close have you been to her?
Like with about this close.
Oh, okay.
Because I think you've taken her on a 5K race before.
Yeah. We want. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. My bad. So you guys have all met my dog.
I don't know how formal I had to be.
No. Did you get an invitation? No, but we went to a dog park, and I kept her on leash as I walked in, which is usually a weird thing for a dog park. You usually let your dog loose pretty quick. But I hold her on leash just because she gets really riled right at the beginning. And then if she has like 2 minutes to just like not be overwhelmed by other dogs, she chills out and she's totally fine the rest of the time. So we just kind of walk around the edge. We don't really interact with anybody at first, and then it's all good. But this lady that was there,
this lady starting the conversation off well.
Yeah. So this lady that was there, she saw us come in, and her dog immediately like charged my dog. Jeez. And it's a dog thing. Like a new dog. Oh, I gotta go meet this new dog. But because of how excited the dog was, it wasn't a great situation. And she tried to call the dog probably a half dozen times. And the dog didn't even twitch an ear. Like literally just full focus on me and my dog. And I honestly think I probably could have handled that dog better than she could in that moment, because the dog was so attentive to just us. And then it started barking crazy. It went around me instead of actually approaching to just, meet the dog. It tried to get behind her really fast, which is not a good thing either. And so it just turned into a bad situation. And like 5 minutes later, after she had actually wrangled her dog, she then flips the script and is like, your dog's really bad off leash, isn't she? And I'm like, come again? And she's like, well, it's a bad sign that you left the dog on a leash, and that's why my dog is freaking out. Here's what you should have said. And I was like, no, she's actually okay off leash. She just needs a minute. Like, it just takes time. And then she proceeds to do exactly what we were talking about. She looked at me and she's like, no, actually, the correct answer would have been, no, my dog is not good off of leash. And no, I should not be at a dog park where I can loose this leash off of my dog and have it interact with others. That's what you should have said, because you don't have control of your dog. And so I stood there for a minute. And I was like, I had like so many things going through my head, and I was like, I can't say any of these like without just slamming this poor little old lady into the ground. And this is like, okay, well, since you feel that way, we're just gonna go on a walk. And instead of being in the dog park, we just walked our dog and we just went our own way. And it was better because there were plenty of things that me and my wife, who was with me, were willing to say in that moment. But that was definitely right along with what you were talking about, of like somebody giving advice when we got our dog, she was abused to the point where she would not come out of a closet out of an unused room in our house. So like we would walk past the room and she would run into the closet and hide. Like she was that torn up. And we've gotten her to the point where she loves meeting people. She loves going outside, and she's just a little bit overcharged in a lot of situations. And we just need to calm her down, and then she's good and she can handle it. But because of how bad she started, I did hours upon hours upon hours of research on how to work with dogs. And even though I had done some before, this was a whole new breed. Whole new animal. But this was a whole new thing for me. And so I had to do a ton of research. And so I knew my stuff going into this. And now even more so coming out of it, of helping this dog get to a point where she's actually a dog and not, a spirit of the night. And that was why I could have that conversation with her and realize like, okay, you're just kind of making crap up, because like you don't know what you're talking about. If you can't recall your dog at all and your dog causes this situation, yeah, I'm not going to take advice on training dogs. Like that's not going to happen. So I'm absolutely with you of like, there are definitely people that don't live out the advice that they're willing to throw at people. And I think that disqualifies some of the advice, Our topic's on subconscious and intrusive thoughts, so
I mean, you touched on it.
You brought it back nicely.
Cool, great. So somebody else should say something before I keep going.
Go ahead.
Okay. Just something that keeps popping into my mind when I think about intrusive thoughts is this might be common or might not be as common as I thought it would be, but just like when you're driving, and kind of like what Isaac was touching on is like the agreement to not harm another person, and just like that thin yellow line in the middle of the road, and how you both agree like every time you pass someone just to not swerve and cause lots of destruction. And
Yeah.
there's I don't know, there's different ways I wanted to like approach this topic, but I think possibly a joking, funny way is kind of how I want to go. And I don't know, it's funny because I forget what movie it was, but I think it was like what's his name? This is embarrassing. It's the guy that plays the Grinch, Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey.
Yeah, so I think it was one of his movies, and he was talking about like one of his intrusive thoughts or something, and he's like,
Yeah.
no, I think it was like one of his comedy bits. He was saying, oh, if I did this, that would be a pretty big inconvenience on my day, so I won't do that. And I was like, that kind of tracks. Like, obviously, it's an intrusive thought, so it's obviously just a very bad decision. But sometimes that's what I think about when I have intrusive thoughts. Like, just kind of walk yourself through it. If I listen to this intrusive thought and just kind of, then that'd be a lot of damage to people and property, and in a nutshell, it'd be a big inconvenience on a lot of people's days.
So yeah, that's an understatement for a head-on collision. Yeah, that's true. That would be very inconvenient.
Yep. So I don't know, that's kind of my humorous way of approaching that specific topic. But
yeah,
that was another thing I was thinking about, is just kind of avoiding those intrusive thoughts while you're driving.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it probably makes sense why intrusive thoughts really do get such a dark actual definition if they're associated with so many of these mental health things. Because at some point, a lot of the mental health things that are attached to intrusive thoughts no longer care about themselves, no longer care about, quote, inconveniences to me, so an intrusive thought just feels like a normal action because it doesn't matter, that quote. So I could see, that's not from research, that's just kind of logicking that out, but figuring out that would make sense that those sort of thoughts become more and more dangerous the deeper into a mental problem you go. Even just having everything taken away from you, you don't have any sort of mental difficulty, you just literally have the worst week of your life. It's so much easier to believe that things don't matter at the end of that week, because this fell apart, that fell apart, this fell apart, this collapsed. And so eventually it gets to the point where what?
My phone. Can you hear me, my phone? I was trying not to interrupt you.
But eventually it turns into it's not so much an inconvenience because everything's inconvenient, so why not do it? That would be my guess.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It kind of goes along with what I was thinking. Also, what I found is someone said they can be persistent and cause significant distress, but people typically don't act on them. In fact, the harder people try to get rid of intrusive thoughts, the more intense or persistent they can become. And so, it goes on to talking about how, one of the ways to help with intrusive thoughts is to not really think about them, not
anti-stealth.
Anyway,
not thinking why did I think that, and what would happen if I did that, but more of just be oh, it's intrusive thought, and kind of move on. Or it also says I was kind of just thinking, I feel like we're talking about all this harm and everything, I feel like it would be helpful just give ways to get rid of this, or to help with this, as mental health kind of person that I like to be. But so multiple ways they say. One way is identifying the root cause. So like what's making you think this, or think of like the origin, or develop strategies to manage them. Another way is label them as intrusive, just like separating intrusive from your regular thoughts. Like I said, another is don't focus on it. And then the last one is accept and examine negative emotions. So accepting and examining negative emotions may help illuminate unconscious conflict and decrease the chance of anxiety bubbling up to the surface as intrusive thought.
That's really interesting, because a lot of that is how you mentally process through like a ton of stuff. Like that's a lot of psychology right there. Like
Nice.
101 of like, how do you work through your problems? There's a lot of content that follows a very similar pattern. So it's, again, little me over here just being like, oh gosh, intrusive thoughts are like actually dangerous, aren't they? And see, I'm like enjoying all these TikToks of people saying like, what if I slap that guy? But it's like, it's a lot deeper than that, you know? It's not just haha funny. Like this is a tough thing for a lot of people, which was kind of, I mean, I feel bad, but it was kind of news to me. Like we treat it as such a joke all the time. Again, with the circles that I run in, like I was just kind of surprised, like, and that just backs it up even more of like, yeah, this really is a psychological thing that you got to work through.
Yeah.
It's something that I struggle with every single day.
Yeah.
Every single day that I have breath in my lungs.
I feel like having a customer-based job. Like, I don't have to look at customers ever.
So true, though.
I was literally thinking about the situation where we had this like overweight tub of lard come out and scream at us for doing exactly as we're supposed to do, because he didn't. So this guy, he works in a machine shop, and he's new to the promotion of being in the machine shop. He's normally just pouring metal. And I'm keeping certain specifics out because I have certain things I can't disclose. But he turned in 4 towels. And our inventory system is we wash, you pay for an X amount of towels. So he pays for 110 towels. The 10 that he's using around the shop, the 50 that are supposed to be in the dirties, and the 50 I'm bringing him clean that I washed from the previous week. So if you only give me 4 towels 1 week, I can only wash and bring back 4 towels, but I can't do that because they only come in bags of 50. So then if you turn in 196 the next week, you're not going to have any towels. And he comes out yelling. He's like, blah, 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 blah. And again, I've only met this guy over the course of the last 2 weeks. I've been servicing these guys forever, for like the last 2 years almost. In November, it'll be 2 years. Great relationship with everybody else. You let me know what your problem is, I'll fix it as quickly as possible. And you have to follow the system. Otherwise, I can't help you. I don't have the tool. If you're not listening or you're not following the instructions, like, hey, if your thing's damaged, set it aside. I'm not going to look through 150 pieces of garments, of dirty garments that smell like crotch and all these other nasty things, because they've been worn by sweaty dudes to search for your dirty stuff. It's not my responsibility in the least bit. Set it aside and I'll get it to you. Then I'll almost guarantee you that it's 2-week turnover. We'll fix it. We'll turn it back. And he just, I've explained it to him 2 or 3 times, and he came out shouting and is telling me, well, you don't do this, you don't do that unless I say so. And he's the bottom of the totem pole, literally the bottom of the totem pole. It was such a big deal to the management there that by the time I got to the other customer on the other side of town that was their partner, they'd already knew about it. Their management already knew about it. They said, don't ever talk to your guy like this, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, man, intrusive thoughts. Just the whole time I'm like, this guy's overweight and he's not strong. And dude, I could knock him out really easy. And I'm like, I take care of my body. I take care of the way I act. And I told him to go, I told him, I just repeated the lines that I'm supposed to repeat just over and over and over again. And I'm like, how many people don't have systems don't have the routine of, I've dealt with this 100 times, hundreds of times, close to 1,000 times. I've dealt with people. I've been spit on, slapped. I've been pushed down on the ground as an adult. I've had food thrown at me. I've even had somebody on my foot. A human being on my foot.
Same job?
No.
Oh.
No.
Different job.
I'd have got a huge payout. While the Wildmen would have paid me a lot of money. They would have made it up to me somehow. But just those intrusive thoughts are like all the time. I'm like, I could just kick this person in the balls and then walk away. But it's like, okay, you can't do that, because not only would that hurt you, but it would hurt your family. It would hurt your name. It would hurt your family's, like your extended family. And it's like all this goes through my mind in a split second, and it doesn't have to, but it happens when I hold on to that stress, when I hold on to that anxiety right there in that minute. And I'm like, instead of holding on to that like stress, I was like, okay, this is just water going in one side of my ear and out the other. I'm like, I'm sitting in a river, and I can either fight against the river or just kind of like float back and just be like, this is nice. And that's how a lot of the way that I deal with my stress is, okay, you handle what you're supposed to do the work that you're supposed to do. But then the thoughts of you failing, the thoughts of you make a mistake and then your family can't afford to feed your family, then you can't focus on that. You can't, like, if you hold on to it, like if you try to fight the river that you're in, then you could drown. Like you could get sucked down, and like nobody swims in the St. Joe River for the same reason. Like it's dangerous to swim in that river. But if you're on a boat and you're just kind of like chilling, it's fine. That's how I view a lot of my like intrusive or just normal thoughts. I'm like, okay, a lot of my brain is like, oh my God, you're going to die if you just accidentally rolled through a stop sign. Somebody's going to die. I'm like, we're in the middle of butt crack nowhere. Nobody's going to die for accidentally rolling through a stop sign, not coming to a 3-second complete stop. It's like, okay, do better next time. You know there's a stop sign coming down the road, and it's like, nobody's going to lose their mind. You're not going to get fired for rolling through a stop sign. If you kill somebody, you will. But, like...
Slaughter is slightly illegal.
Yeah, it is. But if you, like, our GPS trackers, our system is designed to, you have to come to a stop. A complete stop, and then it takes an extra second or two for the GPS to register that you've come to a stop, and then you can go. So you stop, your vehicle stops motion, everything just stops for a second, and you're like 1, 2, and then you can go. And that's how it is. But it's hard. It happened, like, just making sure that anxiety doesn't take hold, and you don't hold on to it, and you're like, oh my gosh, like. That kind of interaction used to scare the out of me. Just absolute, like I would lose sleep over interactions like that. And now I'm like, Like even our trainee was like, dude, you handled that like a pro. I was like, what? No, I just ignored him, dude. Like I literally just ignored him. I was like, all right, have a good day. Go talk to your manager because I'm sending in, I'm reporting you for your bad attitude because your company has a zero policy for this kind of stuff. Or like we had a truck pull out in front of us, and it's like it felt like in that situation, if we handled it poorly, our lives could be at risk. But it didn't end up being that way, and somebody was just pulling out in front of us, and we were parked in our designated parking spot in the street. Totally fine. We had our flashers on. We were far enough away from this intersection. This guy pulls out, and he's like, you can't bleep park there. Like, just cussing at us, screaming at us, and our trainees sitting in the truck getting screamed at. And then I come out there, being this 6'4", kind of like, I don't take crap from anybody kind of person. And I'm staring him down, and I'm beelining it towards this guy. And I step right in my truck, and I shout the phrase that I'm supposed to shout. Like, you need to get back in your vehicle. I'm legally allowed to park here. Go call the cops on me if you want to. Go right ahead and we'll sit here and wait for them. You're on camera. And then 3 of the other customers at the place that I'm at, it's at a gas station that I service, come out and start like beelining it for this guy that's cutting us off. And I'm like, you know, unless this guy has a gun, there's no chance that he's going to hurt me. Like there's 0 chance. But I was like, I have a 16-ton truck. I can just run him over. Like I can run this whole situation. And it's like, but I won't.
Good ad.
But it's like every second of every day when I have thoughts that are like inappropriate or like thoughts that are not appropriate for that situation, I'm like, okay, I got to remember I'm in a river and I'm floating. I got to float, man. I got to just relax and just let it go. And just because if I hold on to anything, then I'm going to let that thought win. I'm going to let that person win. I'm going to let that evil out and evil win. Or I can just take that frustration and just work so much harder and just please so many other people that it makes up for it. And that's a lot of times what I do. And part of the reason why I train so hard. And like, I had a guy was like, dude, you're insane. You just did this, this, and this. You had a 15-hour shift and then you went and worked out for 2.5 hours. I was like, yeah, because I was frustrated because I want to come home in a level-headedness. And that is what helps me get level-headed is working hard. Like these are the systems that I've put in place to keep me safe, to keep me from losing my mind. And it might sound kind of crazy, but it's like your body produces certain chemicals in certain situations to act to, my life is at risk. I might have to fight. I might have to physically defend myself. And that's what it's supposed to do. I heard Joe Rogan talking about UFC fighters. He was like, 9 times out of 10, you will never meet a UFC fighter that doesn't throw up before every single fight. It's because their adrenaline's pumping, their life is at risk. They know that they're going into this, and that's normal to feel like you're about to throw up because all those chemicals are just wah! Like, okay, we're getting into gear. It's like, all right, we're here in the fight. We might have to risk our lives, and that's part of that chemical process. And you can leave part of that behind in your brain. And if you don't do something physical about it, then your body's just prepared itself for a fight that never actually happened. And so it could just lead over into frustrating yourself later, frustrating your sleep right before sleep. And so that it can stop you from sleeping. I forget the exact chemical name because I didn't care about learning it, but there's a chemical that your body produces alongside adrenaline that keeps you focused and awake. And I mean, that's part of what adrenaline does. But if your body doesn't use up that energy that it just produced like that, then it turns into frustration. It turns into anger. It turns into hate, and hate leads to suffering, and suffering. I was trying to do the Yoda quote, but I forgot it past that. But it's like, you got to just let it go or work harder to do something physical to get rid of that. Otherwise it will build up so much that it will take over and you will lash out. Like I let something at work get to me that was so dumb. It was the dumbest thing. I was like, it would have cost you 5 minutes to fix this. And now it's blowing up. Everybody sees it now. And it would have just, and I yelled at my son because of it. And it's like, I let that intrusive thought, like, just scream at him, just yell at him, just be like, shut the hell up. And I did that the other day, and I had to go back and apologize to him. Or I'll be like, I'll let things from work I'll let those intrusive thoughts come out. And a lot of times it's just like, okay, you can stop caring about being polite to your wife, even though she's being a pain. Like, that's a lot of the intrusive thoughts. Or like, Travis is inconveniencing me so little, it costs me like 10 minutes. It's not that important. Nobody's going to die. We have plenty of time. But it's like, you should just... No, I understand. That's totally fine. But it's like, a lot of times what I want to say to you is like, be mean. I want to be mean. Being late is something that aggravates the absolute out of me. You can ask my trainee. I've ripped into him so many times for being late. And our job is not it doesn't matter. It really doesn't make that big of a difference if it's 5 or 10 or 15 minutes late, especially in the line of work that I'm in. You get the job done, you get it done decently fast. You just have to work harder if you show up late. Like, it doesn't matter. And it's like, okay, I gotta lean back and just be like, all right, I'm floating in this river. I'm just letting these thoughts go by. I'm like, I love Travis no matter what. Like, that's the kind of friendship that we have. So I don't care if he's late 35 times in a row. It's on things that don't matter. It's not like he's being late for his job. He's not being late to show up for his wife. He's not being late to show up for his family when hits the fan. It's like on the weekend when we're like, oh, let's go work out at about this time. And then we're a little bit late. Yeah. Like stuff like that doesn't matter. But if you hold on to that thought and then you're like drowning yourself because this thing's dragging you down, it's like, you got to let it go and not let those intrusive thoughts get in. All right, somebody else want to talk? I'm tired of hearing my own voice.
Drop off. I don't know if I can tap that. So one thing I wanted to mention, I think a few of you guys mentioned this in different ways, but I had this meditation app on my phone. I think I still do, but it kind of touches on like getting ready for sleep and just kind of quieting your mind and just, maintaining control of like your thoughts and your actions and your desires. And one thing it mentioned is just kind of the illustration of like your thoughts being a river and you being like a possible object in the river, or just someone like a bystander next to the river. Like if you want to, if you want to try to go to sleep, you can either stand in the river and try to stop the thoughts from flowing by. Like if your mind's racing, you're thinking about your day, you're thinking about everything you need to plan for in the future. You can try to stop those thoughts. You can try to go to sleep quicker, or you can just stand on the shore and let those thoughts flow by. And it might sound counterintuitive to some people, but basically the lesson was if you stand, if you kind of stand by and let the thoughts flow by, you can acknowledge the thoughts. You can be like, okay, this might be something I need to make a note of, but, I recognize this thought, but I'm just going to let it flow by. I'm not going to try to stop it, because I feel like that's kind of where the anxiety comes in, is when you put too much thought or focus into it, especially when you're trying to quiet your mind. You just need to kind of acknowledge it, but then just let it flow by. And as I'm saying this, I realize like different people have different ways of thinking and different mental abilities and strengths and weaknesses. So like it might be easier said than done for some people, but it's just a good visualization for me. It's just like when I'm trying to go to sleep and I have 100 things in my mind, I just try to remember that, as much as I try to stop these thoughts or try to quiet my mind, the more aggressive approach I take, it's just going to be kind of counterproductive.
I think you and I have used the same app.
Yeah, probably.
I think it's also important to note the difference between a truly intrusive thought and a desired reaction to something. Because intrusive thoughts don't always rest on a difficult situation. Sometimes it just rests in a random moment of like, oh yeah, I could do this. One of the most common intrusive thoughts is that when you're in a high place, people just naturally will go, I wonder what happens if I jump off. And it's like,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's not a normal thought that a lot of people follow, because we'd be hearing about that and getting a lot more warning signs of, no, seriously, don't jump off the cliff, please. But, in a stressful situation, your mind's going to try and react in whatever way that you're most prepared for. I'm speaking a little bit out of what research I know and a little bit out of just experience. But when there's a hostile environment that you are dealing with, it's actually natural to want to end that hostility in some way. Whether that looks like, a fight or flight response, or if that looks like, hey, I could just end this by ... And some of that's maybe not intrusive so much as this is just the natural process of my brain trying to figure out how to get out of this. But even that being said, like, the reason that intrusive thoughts are so intrusive is because it breaks social norms. It breaks what we have deemed on a conscious level. We have deemed this is okay. And so regardless of whether it's an intrusive thought or if it's just something that is too far for the situation at hand, there's a really strong reason why we've consciously said, especially as a collective social group, why certain things are okay and why certain things are not okay. And not all of those are right. Not all of those decisions are always correct. There are things that we've deemed right that, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe we got that wrong. But there are definitely things like, you don't just stab somebody. You don't just pull into the other oncoming lane of traffic. Like,
unless no one's coming.
Well,
That's true.
There are things that we've deemed as acceptable because it helps and it protects and it lets life continue forward. So, yeah, I mean, it's a mixed batch of how we need to respond to things, but it's still definitely got to line up with what we've already accepted and what we've already talked about, like things that we've already said. This is how society works. So, what you got, man?
Yeah, that's about all I had to say. One other thing I was thinking, not directly connected to what we've said recently, but we've said before. Just like, especially with kids, like when you tell them not to do something, it's like a psychology 101. They're going to want to do that thing. So it's like, yeah. So I feel like that could be part of it. Could be part of the intrusive thought is, yeah, you say not to do something, or even if you're telling yourself don't do that thing, and you keep telling yourself don't do that thing, you're going to want to do that thing even more.
Yeah.
But
when you tell a human being not to think of a purple elephant,
yeah,
the very first.
Oh my god! The first thing that comes to mind is a purple elephant.
Yep, that's it.
Every time.
Yep.
And not just any elephant, but the elephant from Adventure Time, just painted purple, comes to mind.
Even when I'm trying not to think of something else, I try to think of like a purple elephant. I'm trying to think of a purple elephant. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Just the elephant.
Mm-hmm.
So intrusive thoughts are very similar. I mean, that's why you read what you did. Like, how do you avoid it? You don't sit there and challenge it. You just let it go, move on, work through it, find the root of the problem, stuff like that. Like, you don't try to address the thought itself and hold on to it, because the longer you try to hold on to it to control it, the more likely it is to become something that's not what you want.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I was just hearing that recently too about the same can be said for sin or temptation. Like, the more you think about it or fight it, it's not really going to get much easier. The best thing to do is just to like avoid it, avoid the temptation and replace it with something else. Whenever you're trying to get rid of something, you want to avoid that, but also replace it with something so that you're not just seeing it in the rear view and you keep looking at it.
Power loves a void.
Yeah.
So you rip something out and you don't replace it, there's just a gaping hole. And it's just asking for something else, potentially worse, to fill it.
Right. Any other ideas on intrusive or...
So this has been heavy. This has been...
Yeah.
There's been a lot.
Yeah.
In depth over here.
Podcast. Sometimes it's heavy. Sometimes we joke the whole time.
Yep. I kind of gathered.
Sometimes
it's just poo poo and pee pee jokes.
Sometimes it's in the topic. Sometimes it's near the topic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So that being said, let's try this for a question for you guys. What are some intrusive thoughts that you have seen kids act on?
Oh. So my son is like 18 or 19 months old, and he loves to just take a cup off the side or take a coffee cup that's sitting at his eye level and stare me down and just wait for me to yell at him. Be like, I swear I'm going to lose my on you, sir, if you spill that coffee mug while I'm playing video games. And he's like, whoop. He's just like a cat. I'm like, all right, headset comes off, throw the headset down, run after him. And he's like, wow, no, please, please forgive me.
You brought this toxin upon yourself.
Yeah, basically. It's like, I have the high ground. Don't try it, Henny.
I was thinking that as you said that. Like, do cats have that? Do they have intrusive thoughts?
No, cats just assume they're in charge, so there is no intrusive thought. Exactly. It is their will or nothing else.
So guess what? This is in my space.
You thought this was safe. Well, unfortunate.
We've got a spot that is just designated the coffee spilling spot, and that's where we always forget to grab our cups from, and that's where Finn always spills our coffee. Because, and like at this point, it's not so much him just being a turd, it's him, he wants something, he sees us drinking the cup all the time, so he tries to, but he doesn't have enough motor control to grab it with two hands yet. He'll grab the handle and pull it off, and it's too heavy. Yeah. But he'll like try and grab it, or he'll spill it all over himself.
So I think one of my favorite intrusive thoughts that I've ever been witness to, I was a soccer coach, and I was a soccer coach for like second and third graders. So like just enough motor control that they can run with the ball, and just not enough motor control that they can actually control that ball. And there was another team that we were playing that day that the coach had not done a great job of teaching the kids what was legal physical contact. And so they had, and I admittedly, I had a pretty small team. Like most of my players were just a little under the average of what you'd expect from a second grader. And so they were just small. They were fast. They were great. I loved coaching them. But that meant that when they came against a team that was a lot more physical and shoved them a little bit more than they were used to, they just kind of fell to the ground. And so about halftime, they were like, man, we're so tired of this. Like, what do we do? And I'm like, I'm not really even sure what to coach at this point. Because, like, the best thing I could come up with is push them back. Like, at this point in time, I've seen you guys hit the dirt so many times. That's what I want to tell you. But I tried to give them some advice, tried to help them out. And then I watched right at the beginning of the second half. We got the ball, and one of my spunkier players acquired the ball and looked down the field, and I could see it processing in her brain. She's like, what do I need to do to go through all of these people? It was not how do I get the ball around. It was not how do I go score. It was how do I make sure no one's standing after I'm done.
Nice.
And the first defender comes up, and she just rears back and kicks it as hard as she can straight into the other team's face.
Nice.
Just drops the kid immediately. And like literally every single parent on the side. And I'm sitting there silently going, yeah. Get it. Yeah. Good job. Fully legal. I'm proud of you. And she took the ball and she went around the poor dead body that was on the ground, and like I don't even remember if she actually made it any farther, but like you could just see it on her face of like, I could just kick this really hard and it'll probably not be something you can stop. And yeah, she was very right.
It's fun to have kicking power. Gives you a little bit of control over the field.
Yeah. So what about you two?
Who two?
You two.
Us two.
Yeah, Isaac and I have already said something. So
what is the topic?
So best intrusive thought that you've seen out of a kid.
So, I've had a little bit of experience with watching over kids at youth group. I use the term watching over them because I'm usually in charge of the middle school boys, so it's a little less teaching, a little more watching. Yep. Making sure they cause the least amount of disturbance as possible. But like, just the minds of middle school boys, and they just have that mindset of like, okay, I have someone watching over me. They're not my parents. I'm gonna see how much they'll let me get away with. so just nothing super specific, but just like how sneaky they are, and sometimes not sneaky. Like one kid brought this like coach's whistle.
Yeah, you
to
told me about this.
And thankfully, like the little ball that like spins in it, like it got stuck, so it didn't have like a full on whistle blow, but it had like a sound like it was trying to. And I'm like, dude, come on, you know this isn't gonna fly. And thankfully, I had the courage to go up there and ask him for the whistle, and thankfully he gave it to me eventually, so I didn't do the walk of shame back to my seat. So that's what I was fearing. Like that's one thing I'm trying to work on, is just being the type of person, especially with other people's kids, that hey, this isn't right. I know I'm not your parent, but I gotta stop you on this. I'm trying to lead you down.
There's a level of assertiveness that you just need to have. Like
right.
Sometimes the answer is no.
Yeah, that's, sorry to interrupt. That's like something I've been working with my nephew, because he's the oldest out of all of our kids, but not by much. And Finn is very much stronger than he is, but his brain's more developed, so he knows that he can get away with more. And his dad is out of state doing some work to earn them enough money to feed them for the next. They work for like 6 months and then have 6 months off. They work like really, really hard for a little while, doing some crazy stuff, and then, but my mother-in-law, his aunt, or his grandma, yeah, it'd be his grandma, takes care of him while they're away, and she's over here all the time. And he's kind of an a-hole. Like, he'll push Finn and just be like, boom, and I'm like, I didn't want to get loud with him, but like, all right, you've not listened to grandma 3 times, and I'll stand up really fast to assert, okay, I'm not playing around. You've got 3 seconds to respond to me, or I'm going to get in your face. Respectfully and kindly. He's still a toddler, but like he doesn't, his parents don't like discipline him like a normal American parent like would discipline. Like they're very lenient. They're very kind of like hippie, do what you want kind of deal. And like he'll push every single button. And it's like, okay, now I have to lay the law. You're in my house. I'm feeding you. I'm taking care of you. I will make sure that nobody lays a hand on you. But might scare you a little bit. Like, you cannot push my son down. You cannot steal stuff you cannot break my stuff and not expect me as the head of the house, no matter if grandma's here or not. Like, grandma's wonderful and we love her to death and we'll take whatever help she gives us. But you have to listen. If you don't, you get 3 strikes and you're out. Once you're out, I'm dealing with you. I will turn around once you've realized you've made a mistake and make sure that you know that you're still loved and give you physical affection. I'll give you a hug. Hey, you're still here. You're still my family. I still love you. 10 minutes from now, once you've learned your lesson a little bit, we'll have fun. That's how it needs to be, in my house at least. But you're going to get scared. And I'm going to put you in the corner and you're going to stay there. And I'll sit right behind you for 10, 15 minutes, losing my mind. I'm like, why do I have to do this? This is so dumb. I'm being punished with you. Like, I have to sit here because I know if I don't, you won't sit here in this corner kind of deal. And it's like, all right, I don't want to do this, but it's like you push so much. You'll take stuff out of Finn's hand and grandma will yell at you and then you won't listen to her, or she'll tell you 7 times the last time he was over to put your shoes on. And I'm like, I take my headset off, mute it, and then get a little bit loud. Not like yelling at him, but like, I'm going to use my big boy voice. Like, get your shoes on now kind of deal. And it's like, how much of this did I do to my parents? Because I know how much of a pain in the butt as an adult I'm to deal with. How much more was I to deal with? I'm like, oh man, I kind of deserve dealing with this.
That's a big realization moment.
But it's like it also scares me. Like I want his dad to still feel like his kid's safe here. But it's like, it still scares me sometimes. Like, oh, am I overstepping my bounds? Like,
Sure.
but
I
it's
mean,
like, okay.
That's like a learning process for every parent, I think. I mean, every parent who takes their job seriously. They got to figure out, like, all right, what do I need to say no to? What do I need to not say anything? Because they're learning, they're growing, it's fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's reasonable. We still missing yours, Jake.
Yeah. I don't feel like I have much to report. Similar to Travis, just like being in positions like leading kids, of them like trying to bend the rules or find what the rules are exactly by doing what they shouldn't do. Or I feel like sometimes I've seen kids like have a juice and look at the carpet and be like, oh, I could stain that.
That carpet.
And be like, oh,
Should I pour this out?
spilled. Oh, that's interesting. That stays there. Cool.
It's like painting, but with carpet.
Yeah. I feel like I've seen that sort of thing. Or like, yeah. Or with Play-Doh, throwing it on the ground and just it going everywhere. Making messes, that sort of thing.
Sorry to interrupt, but before I forget, something that I've realized I've done is I do the same thing at work. So like work took a big chunk of told us we were getting one thing as a bonus, and then just was like, we didn't follow every letter of the ruling, and so they like cut our bonus, and at least mine did, because mine was heavily dependent on them not listening to this specific rule about our bonus. And I'm like, I flipped out on management. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. This is so ridiculous. This is the thing that we make fun of our competition for doing, and you just did it. And I'm like, okay, so you not only make me not want to participate by not laying out all the rules, but you also make me want to push the boundaries on what I can get away with and what I can't get away with now. Because it's like, okay, you told me I was going to get $1,600 minus taxes. Okay, taxes is usually $300 or $400. I still expect X amount of dollars, and then you cut another $400 or $500 off of that because this person is like, the rule pushing is like, all right, now I'm going to push all the rules for the next 2 months so that I know exactly how to handle this when we come back. And it's like, I do a lot of that, more so than I should sometimes. Like, I got written up the other day, not going to lie, a couple months ago for that exact thing. One of the management messed with stuff on my truck, and I flipped out on him, like more so than I've ever flipped out on any other male leadership above me ever in my life. And I overstepped my bounds, but my son does the same thing. He does the exact same thing. He's like, okay, where are the exact lines? And it's like, I can't explain to him right this second. He's just got to learn by cause and effect.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to remind myself that regularly. Like, he'll pull if he wants attention, he'll just pull the DVDs off the shelf. He's not damaging anything, but he knows that it pisses me off. So I'll come over and then end up putting him back on the shelf, yelling at him, and then playing with him afterwards because he's bored. I'm like, oh, that's the exact same thing I do. I pick at my wife until she plays with me or does something with me, or like playing a video game or something. I mean, the dirtiness too, but I'll like poke at her until she like watches a movie with me, or like we'll go on a date or we'll go for a walk or something. I'll be like, I am losing my mind in this little house that I have, and do something with me, anything at all. Just pay attention to me. And my son does the exact same thing. And it's like, okay, I got to remind myself that it's not, I'm doing the same thing he is doing. He's learning. And a lot of times I'll let those intrusive thoughts take over, and I'll be like, all right, you're going to sit in your crib and cry for a little bit because I'm tired of dealing with you. And you pissed me off one too many times. I'm like, no, you need to stop. Go back in there, pick him out of his crib, play with him because he's bored. He is losing his mind because he has nothing to do right now. He's a crackhead. He needs to go 100 miles an hour every second of the day.
Those half-baked crackheads.
Yeah, those half-baked crackheads. Oh, dude. Oh, man. So his cousin has more word comprehension by a long shot, and he's like 4 or 5 months, but he came out full term, so you can see the differences between a premature baby and a non-premature baby. But Finn is so much stronger physically and just understands more things, but he doesn't have he struggles with words. That's the only thing he's like slow on. So it's like he understands, like I'll look at him and he'll go like this. He'll go to touch something and I'll lean forward and stare at him and he'll put his hands up like, I didn't do nothing. I didn't touch it, Dad. So he understands those concepts, but like the words is where he struggles. But yeah, sorry, I don't mean to keep taking over. I like to talk.
It's all good. I was done anyway. I don't remember what I was saying.
I'm so sorry, man.
Staining the carpet with juice.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, carpet juice.
I think that's all I was saying.
Well, how do y'all usually wrap up these here shindigs?
What did we say last time? We had something really, really cool last time, and I can't remember what it was.
I'll have to listen to our own episode.
What did we say? That'll be the ending, just listening to the other one.
It'll be like the dumbest section of the episode, like the like goofiest thing from the episode, and we'll play that as our ending every single time.
Oh,
in the
good,
previous
great.
episode. More work for Josh.
We'll have one person bring a host topic and one person just bring a series of jokes.
Yeah.
That'll be how you
Series
end.
of jokes, sure, conclusion.
Yeah.
In conclusion, love everybody. Treat them with respect. I don't know. I was trying to come up with something wise, but it didn't.
I mean, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Stay on your side of the road.
Keep people safe.
Yep.
Keep yourself safe. And if you throw a pizza in a blender, let us know. It's good.
I feel like that was a good.
Is that good? We're done?
Yeah, I like that.
All right.